Hi, my name is Sherry Hubert. I'm the Associate Dean of Admissions here at Fuqua School of Business at Duke University, and welcome to Blue Table Talks. For those of you not familiar, Blue Table Talks is a series that we put on to really share the student experience across Fuqua and across our multiple programs so that you understand the various diversity that exists here, the ways in which we support our students throughout their journey with us. And today's discussion is entitled Creating Community in honor of Black History Month. It's about creating community at a predominantly white institution. We have wonderful guests here, which you're going to meet shortly. But really what we're going to do is hear about their experiences, both as graduate students at a predominantly white institution, Duke University, where they came from. They all have very unique and different backgrounds. And then the ways in which they have found community and created community here at Fuqua and the resources that they draw upon to make sure that they are also educating their fellow classmates and peers as well along the way. So to get into this, I'm excited to hear from our students and their different perspectives. Let's get right into it. I'm going to, ask them to introduce themselves very briefly. We'll then have a conversation where we'll talk about creating the ways in which we create community. We'll talk about their experience during the application process, which might be of interest to many of you who are at various stages of this process as well. And then I have some specific questions for each of them because they're very unique. So with that, I will turn it over to Shaq, who's on my right here. You want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sherry. My name is Shaq Tinsley. Currently, I work for a company called Eaton Corporation. We're a power distribution company, and I work as a sales manager. And with Duke, I'm a part of the Weekend Executive MBA program, class of 2024. So I'm 1 year in, got about 1 year to go.
DeMontrez?
Nice. I am DeMontrez Johnson. I'm currently a second year here at Fuqua, a part of the daytime MBA program. I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia, went to a historically black college, Savannah State University, and worked in aerospace and defense in accounting and finance before coming here to Fuqua to pivot into consulting, which I was able to successfully do.
Mosun?
I'm Mosmola Ilisami, and I'm in the Masters of Management program here at Fuqua. I'm also originally from Nigeria, and Fuqua was one of the reasons why I came to the United States to study my master's program. Currently, I'm also involved here at Fuqua. I'm currently on the Student Off-Campus Advisory Board, as well as some other clubs here at Fuqua, like the Finance Club, and I'm happy to be here today.
Great. And thanks, everyone. So as you can see, there's representation from our executive MBA program, our daytime MBA program, and our Masters of Management Studies. And all of us actually, not all of us, I shouldn't say that. So Shaq and I actually went undergraduate at predominantly white institutions. And DeMontrez, you went to a historically black college,
Yes.
correct? And then Mosun, you went to a university in Nigeria,
Yes.
right? So a lot of really interesting perspectives. Maybe let's talk about that, right? So maybe we start off with a question around, what have you noticed being at a predominantly white institution at the graduate student level that might be a little bit different than your experience in undergraduate? It could be similar to or different, right? So based on the fact that some of us have been exposed to predominantly white institutions before, but others have not. Anyone can take this question and start off.
Yeah, I'll jump in and go. So for my undergrad experience, I went to the University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio, and like Sherry mentioned, that is a predominantly white institution or PWI. And that experience was a lot, the getting introduced to that was a lot different than my experience getting introduced to Duke for really the main reason being, growing up on the east side of Indianapolis, it was still a diverse population, but my surroundings were majority black, and so coming from that environment to a predominantly white institution was a culture shock, and so it took some time for me to adjust to just being in a different culture and learning how to adapt to things that were a lot different than what I grew up with. And then coming to Duke from my graduate experience, so I'd already had undergrad experience at a PWI. I'd been working in corporate for almost 6-7 years. So coming in, I had experience with a predominantly white environment. And so coming in there, I knew certain things that had certain expectations based on past experiences, and it was a lot easier to adapt and start at Duke as opposed to my undergrad experience.
Mm-hmm. And you say it was a culture shock, right? The first time.
Yeah.
In what way, academically, culturally, socially, I should say, academically, where was it most challenging in terms of having to navigate?
Yeah, the academic piece wasn't tough. It was mostly just socially. It was a huge there's a huge social gap in just language. Just talking and how I would talk back home with my friends versus on campus, some of the slang that I would use, and like what are you talking about, or vice versa. I had to ask questions like what does that mean? Even talking about some of the different interests and things that a lot of my white friends at the PWI would do, I hadn't been exposed to growing up, and that I appreciate that a lot, because now I've done things like skiing, skydiving, things that predominantly growing up, in black neighborhoods or in black culture, we didn't really talk about or do. So I would say socially that was the biggest culture shock for me.
Okay, yeah. Did you try and find your folks when you first got to campus?
So I played football, and that's where I was able to find my people, and just literally within that, you kind of gravitate to people that are like you. So yeah. I had some of a lot of my close friends on the football team were black, but I'm a pretty sociable person, so I had friendships with all different people on the team. But it took me a while on campus to really try to find my tribe, just because I felt like I've got what I need from football and I don't need to branch out. But then I learned about our Office of Multicultural Affairs, and I started hanging out there, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like, now I've got a place I can call home, on campus. So, the first year or two I didn't really seek that out, but my junior year, when I sought that out, it added another element of home for me at UD.
Great. What about you, DeMontrez?
Yes, so definitely I had a extremely different undergrad experience, and I would even go into grade school as well. So coming from Augusta, Georgia, I'm actually used to being the majority as far as racial population is concerned. So that definitely adds a different spin. So coming to Fuqua was actually my very first experience being a minority in an academic setting. So with that being said, like going back to the fact that I went to an HBCU, entering that campus.
Give a shout out to your HBCU.
Savannah State University, the college by the sea. Definitely entering Savannah State, it felt like home. All of the admissions representatives were black. A lot of the professors were black, and over 95% of the student population was black. So it's always very easy to come in and imagine yourself doing anything, like running for student body president. You didn't have to think about any of the complexities that come with differences in race and cultural background. So coming to Fuqua, it was a little different, because Fuqua is the number one MBA for diversity. So we have people from all different cultures, countries, backgrounds. So coming to Fuqua, it was definitely a learning curve for me to be able to come in and really start to branch out of what I would call a black bubble. And it was one of the reasons why I chose Fuqua, because I wanted to have that opportunity to expand my network and be able to really experience with other people their culture, and as well as share mine.
Yeah. No, what about you, Mosun?
I think for me, like, I have like similar experiences with him. Like, I came for my master's program in the United States for Nigeria, and like it was my first time also coming to the United States. So I'd not had like maybe prior work experience being in the United States. And as we know, Nigeria is like filled with black people, so I was practically in school with like people that were like me all my life. And so like coming into the United States, although it was my intention to want to actually have that diverse education whereby I could actually learn from other people and also actually know what other cultures were like. And it was something that I was looking forward to be very honest. And coming here, like, it was something that I've been experiencing in terms of like the diverse cultures that are here, including the whites as well as like other cultures from other people, as well as blacks that are here as well. So even from my fellow maybe black people, they've had different experiences than I have. Like some people that are in the MBA program and even like in my MMS program, as well as like my fellow classmates that are as well from like different backgrounds. So I think it's been a switch for me definitely, but it was something that I was looking forward to wanting to experience, and so I think that helped shape my expectations in terms of like, am I open to actually learning from these people? Like, am I open to like finding out like what their experiences were like? And it's something that like coming here, you find courses that people did that like I never really heard of, and then like they're sharing maybe like their experiences from those courses or backgrounds, and so like I'm open to actually learning how their experiences have come along, and I think it's helped shape my, I would say, my broad perspective about things. And so I think it wasn't so much of like a difficulty when it comes to like adapting, but definitely I had to be open to like learning what they had to offer with their experiences.
Yeah. So you're in a unique situation. So it's interesting because you're, it's a different experience both being in the United States culturally, right? American culture, and also being in the United States from a, African versus African American culture, right? But being a black woman in the United States, and then also being at a predominantly white institution. Was there any aspect of any of those identities or experiences that took a little bit more kind of getting used to, or that surprised you in terms of what you versus what you expected?
Surprising, not so much. Definitely, like coming into the United States was like I had to like figure out things on my own, like even like where I had to live or like how to get to school. Even I would say in terms of like maybe the meals, like the kind of food that would appeal to like me. It's definitely different. So those are like, and there was a time I was talking to my friend and I was like, okay, I actually want to learn how to eat some of these things, and that's because like I'm just trying to be open-minded and actually learning and doing things different from what I was used to doing back home. And this also just speaks to like even the people you meet, like are you interested in like having their conversations with them and knowing what they know that you do not know. In terms of music, we probably have different tastes in music, and like the other, like sometime last year we had like a winter formal, and then like I was actually learning how to dance, like my Indian friends, like the way they dance and everything. So I think it just boils down to you actually being open to like learning these things. Definitely it's something that is different from what you're used to, but I would say the environment here at Fuqua has really helped as well, because even like within my teams, it's a diverse team, and so like you actually get to experience like different people, and so like what they know or what they understand and their experiences. So well, definitely moving was a lot, missing my family and everything, but I would also say that like I've been able to build a community that's like made things easier for me.
It's funny she mentioned music being something, the adapting. So I think back to my culture shock at UD, and that was one of the things that music and movies, like entertainment in general, that really, really shocked me. Like I just, assumed everybody knew what The Wood was. Everybody knew what, Friday. Like, these are staples. How do you not know Morris Chestnut or Gabrielle Union? So, they would do the icebreaker questions like, what's your favorite movie and who are your favorite actors, and nobody knew them. And I'm like, all right, so. I am in a different environment, and so I was like, well, I have these movies. I love the Oceans series, Oceans 10, 11, and 12, and so, or 11, 12, and 13, sorry. And I was like, okay, people know those. So when I get asked what's my favorite movie, I'll say that. When in reality, The Wood is my favorite movie, but no one could really relate to it in those environments. So it's interesting when you noted music being a cultural difference.
As you're talking, you brought up something that triggered me. So it sounds like in many of our experiences as individuals being one of few, it's incumbent upon us to extend ourselves into a majority environment, to express that we are open, that we are curious and inquisitive, and want to kind of integrate and assimilate and acclimate kind of well. Did you find the reverse? Did you find that you had classmates who were not Black, who were very curious and wanted to better understand your culture or your history or your experiences, or was it always kind of one way, given that, again, we're at a predominantly white institution, so perhaps the emphasis is always on, or the expectation is always on us to extend ourselves to the majority?
Yes, I can go on that. So I actually have had a lot of different one-on-one interactions where people just wanted to sit down and just kind of just ask some questions about just like how something that may be a current event in the news might have like affected the community, and then like what different nuances I may see from my perspective on some of those things. And those are things that I really do cherish as a part of my experience, because I know we sometimes feel like it's a burden to have to explain things that we feel like people should just know. But I always rather someone ask me something that they don't understand, so we can actually talk through it. Everyone can move forward with the correct information and the correct way of thinking about those type of things. So it's definitely happened a lot of times, especially with me being the co-president of the Black and Latino organization. We've had a lot of those type of roundtable discussions with people of color to just make sure that everyone's on the same page and that whatever is happening can be understood.
Yeah, I'm similar to you. I welcome those conversations when people want to learn. I know some people, they have, there could be traumas that get brought up, or there's different things they don't like having those conversations, and I completely understand it. But for me, you hit the nail on the head. I'd rather have people have proper information, or have information coming from, someone who's experienced living, in the culture, in the environment, as opposed to people getting on the internet. And we all know confirmation bias comes from that. People are going to look for things that confirm what they already think, as opposed to what they can learn. So I welcome people who extend the olive branch. And to answer your initial question, so in my undergrad experience, just the maturity just wasn't there from a lot of my peers to even think to reach out. So I would say it was like 99% me, going and immersing myself into their culture and into their world, and there wasn't a lot of reciprocation coming back. There were a few people, but there wasn't a lot. Even into my early years in the corporate, it was a lot of the same. It's me extending myself to engage in the culture, which I enjoy doing, but it, like you said, like it can be draining when you're always the one pouring out and not being poured back in. But I say over the last 3 years in the corporate setting, there's been a shift, at least in my company, and I'm seeing a lot more people, who are interested and engaged in, stepping into our culture, or, things that I might find interesting.
Yeah. So, in business school here, how have you found it to be important, or what ways have you grounded yourself in your identity as a Black student within a larger context? So you talked a little bit about Blimbao. Mosun, what are you doing? Shaq, what are you doing?
For me, there's the Blimbao, but there are other clubs where I try to get involved in here. And I think one of the clubs that has helped maybe bring together maybe Blacks and Africans together is the Business in Africa Club. So that way I'm able to identify with my people, and at the same time like try and reason things out regarding like some of the things that you want to do regarding your career. But at the same time, there are other clubs that like I've found helpful and I've found useful. One is like the finance club, which is like different people with like different experiences and opportunities are being shared in these clubs, and I'd found them useful. And so like this is something that I'd taken seriously as well. But like generally, even in terms of like some of our events, you realize that people are actually like willing to have like conversations, and then from there you can actually like get to know people, and things that you think would be important in your career as well, you discuss it. And even like beyond your career, I think one important thing about like the whole business school thing is like you actually having to like expand your network and like the number of people that you know, and just sharing people's experiences and learn more about yours, which like there are different activities here that can help you in doing that. I would say like, for example, Fuqua Friday on its own, you'll be shocked at like how like the depth of conversations you can have with people even while you're just having that meal in the evenings on Fridays. So I've also found that very useful.
Hearing your question makes me think about Idris Elba's recent comments, and he got in trouble for saying what he said by the black community. But so I'll be careful with what I say. But like the question about how you identify or ground yourself, you know, as a black person, as an African American, you know, whatever you identify as. I mean, I think she mentioned some great things like getting involved, getting engaged, because that's how we're able to connect with each other and, you know, have a cultural bond over things that we might have in common. And, you know, and one thing I struggle with is identifying as, you know, a student first. I happen to be a student that's a black person versus I'm a black student, or, you know, and you're thinking about the concept of, you know, I want to be the best Fuqua student, or do I want to be the best black Fuqua student, you know, and things like that. So absolutely, like, you know, I'm firm in my identity. I don't run away from being a black person, being a black man, and any of that. But I also look at things through the view of, you know, how can I be the best, you know, period, or how can, you know, I help us be the best, period. So I think there's that nuance there that, you know, don't want to, definitely not running away from your identity and who you are, but how can you not, I guess, box or contain yourself in
Based
to
on that
just that.
identity. That's a great insight. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how building community, how you've each kind of tried to build community at Fuqua. You know, has it been seamless process? Have there been challenges? You know, and in the times which there have been challenges, how have you navigated those challenges?
Yes, I can take it from the black organizational side. I've learned so much just being one of the co-presidents of the organization, and one of those big things was just how different we are across the black diaspora. And sometimes we, even in the black diaspora, will silo ourselves within that. So a part of me even wanting to run was to start to bridge those gaps and have like African Americans, continental Africans, and even our Caribbean black people come together and start to do a lot more cultural sharing. And by doing that, it's led to a lot of different opportunities. So a group of us did go to Ghana in December together to experience that culture and, you know, touch back down to the motherland. And we've done a lot of other things, like this year during Black Trivia, during Black History Month, we added in trivia from the continent and from the Caribbean history as well, just to start that culture sharing and make sure that those type of things can be, you know, seamless. Now, as far as any...
So can I ask you, we'll
Yes.
stop, don't mean to interrupt, but for that kind of trivia, because I think that's a great way of kind of just educating ourselves, but is that kind of event open to the entire student body so that it's also educational for others who are not?
Right, so this year we kept it only for club members. Going forward, we have talked about making sure that that is more open. And this year, when we planned out Black History Month, we did choose a couple of events that are going to be open to the bigger community, the larger community. One of the biggest ones is Fuqua Friday. So we're really excited about that. We're planning to have a DJ so we can have some of the music across the diaspora played, as well as highlighting some Black inventors. And also we partnered with BIA, who is also going to do their annual Jollof rice competition right before the official start of Fuqua Friday. So we wanted just to make it as much of a 360 Black experience as we could. And that was our biggest way to share with the Fuqua community. Another thing we did to open up to the Fuqua community was to do a movie night. So while I would have liked for it to be attended a little more by the broader community, we did get some allies that came, and we were able to sit and share and watch The Banker, which I had not seen. So I was excited for all of us to share in that moment and just find out even more about Black history, right? We ended up finding out about how two Black men really made an impact, discrimination in LA. So that was a really good thing to be able to share. Then the conversations that could be had right afterwards. So definitely want to do even more of that. We have some plans in spring too to like do some more things similar to like the movie night to open up, and hopefully we get even more participation going forth.
Oh, great. Before we move to more kind of your experience coming into this, curious, anything that you feel like the administration or Fuqua could be doing more of to support students of color? And I just want to say I love your nuance around like you see yourself as a student first and not just a Black student, and so I get that. But but it could, is there something that we can do or that your classmates or allies can do to make sure that there's still recognition and appreciation for the diversity that exists and for your lived experiences, our lived experiences in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so hopefully that didn't come off as a "I don't see color" statement.
No,
that's
no.
not what I was. That's not what.
I didn't think about that.
Okay,
No.
That's not what
No,
I.
it didn't.
But yeah, to your point though. So I mean, I think Duke does a great job with, at least from my experience coming into the WIMBA program, from start to finish, letting us know how they value diversity. And a lot of people throw out diversity and they're just talking about one thing, but Duke makes it clear, diversity. There's diversity in ethnicity and color, and there's things for Black, Black and brown people. There's things for the Indian population, and there's things for people from all these different backgrounds and walks of life. And so for me, literally from my first time searching the program and doing my internet research, I saw that bleeding off the page from, the photos, having representation in the photos, seeing some of the activities and things that were being done for Black culture or around Black cultural events, and then going through the actual process. My first exposure to Duke was the MBA workshop, and so and that's put on by the Black and Latin organization, and the way that it was even presented was, this is the MBA workshop. It tells you it's the minority workshop, but it's like, this is who we are as Duke. We've got these different diverse populations, and so I was like, this is cool. Like, we had a spades game. We had we talked to different Black alumni who are out, doing their thing. We talked to current students. It was just, I was like, man, this is, I feel at home here. And then from there, getting tied in with some of the other Black leaders, and even you, Sherry, you reached out right away when I got admitted. So I literally felt the process was seamless, and finding that community, and then even within my cohort, you got a group of 160 people. People are going to naturally gravitate to different groups, and obviously we're networking with everybody there, right? It's not just like, our clique and everything, but, naturally, some of the black people in our cohort have gravitated to get to one another, and we've been able to build a mini community within our cohort.
That's right, yeah. And we talked a little bit about this beforehand about ERGs, right? So it's the same, it's very similar in corporations or organizations where there are these employee resource groups, affinity groups, where it's helpful to have some level of support and some level of affinity and shared experience that also lifts you up, gives you, is supportive in many ways.
Absolutely. And with Eaton, I serve on our Black and African American Inclusion Resource Group. It's called iConnect, and we do a lot, at the site level and at the corporate level with this ERG to, just like you said, to create a safe space for community, for employees to want to feel engaged, because when you don't have that, it's easy for employees to not feel a part of anything or to kind of feel on an island. So,
right.
Just having those groups and that community that, it's not an exclusive community. It means inclusive to anyone. But, the heartbeat of it is, bred from, the culture of the Black and African American employee.
Yeah. I'm curious, DeMontrez, so coming from a historically Black college, university, were there these similar types of affinity groups? Was there no need for them? Was there a sense of people feeling, like they needed some level of additional support? Or how did that manifest itself, or was it not a thing?
So it wasn't as much of a thing. I think the only form of an affinity group that we had at Savannah State was Model UN. So Model UN kind of brought in more of the continental African students, but outside of that, everyone was Black American for the most part. We had, I think, from continental Africa during my time, we had people that were maybe a few people from Kenya and a few people, which seems a little randomly, but from the Congo. But outside of that, that was really it. So
was there not a need for it?
I don't think it was a need, because everyone just viewed each other as just Black. So the only thing I could see now is maybe organization maybe for LGBTQ people who want to find more of a sense of a community in that way. I do know there are some organizations at HBCUs like that, but outside of that, affinity groups really don't.
So I'm going to ask you guys, and you guys don't all have to answer this. So what's the value? So if you're in a predominantly majority environment that is not your identity, is there a value to finding your tribe or not? Because
Yes.
why is there value to finding your tribe if you're in an environment where you're not in the majority? What does it give you? Is it a safe space? Is it lack of less imposter syndrome? What is that?
Yes, it's definitely a safe space. For Blimbau, we always called Blimbau, at least during my candidacy, the home base. So this is where you can come if you're feeling imposter syndrome. This is where you can come to connect to people to remind you that yes, you do belong. And while anyone can say that to you, I believe that it means more when it comes from someone who looks like you, reassuring you that yes, you're on the right path. Yes, you can make it. Also, I think resource-wise as well, sometimes a lot of Black people, like MBA is not a thing that is talked about in the community. So sometimes you can't even see the path. So it's even reaching into our minority alumni board and being able to connect people with Black people that have already been through the journey and they're already VPs and CEOs of their own businesses, all of those things, it helps make students feel like they can make it and they can do it. And then also just to have a place where, as we've talked about before, everyone can learn from each other, because even as a Black American. I grew up in the South, but my experience can be vastly different than someone that grew up in LA or someone that grew up in New York. So it also allows for us to come together and talk about all of the great things that we share, as well as all of the great things that are different that we've learned, and even how to jointly navigate together the space of being a minority.
Yeah, I think I agree to like his point regarding like you having that safe space, because he also feels the same for me. As much as like I mentioned earlier, you learn wanting to like know what other people have experienced and everything. There's still that part of you that also wants to identify with people that already shared the same experience as you,
Right.
and can also serve as a safe space when you feel like something is going wrong, maybe even regarding like your schoolwork, your school activities, or even some of your expectations regarding what you should be doing while you're here at Fuqua. So having those kind of people that you all probably came from like the same space, and so they can actually relate to what you're saying and then your experience and maybe offer solutions. Not to say that you can't get some of these facts or like experiences or maybe advice from like the other communities, but it's just easier to express when you have that community. So I also just buy into the fact that like it just makes you feel more like you're at home and like a safe space for you.
And one experience I've had that literally illustrates what they just talked about. So I can remember in 2013, that was the Trayvon Martin trial. And I mean, I'm an intern at the time, and I can remember like every day I'm glued to this. And like, you know, when the verdict came out, just we didn't have our Black or African American resource group at the time, and like I didn't have anyone to talk to. Like, man, you know, it was business as usual, and I kind of felt like, okay, does this not matter? You know, is it? Am I just supposed to brush under the rug too? And then in 2020 with George Floyd, now we do have our resource group, and I mean, right away we put in listening circles, and there were all these different things where people could just come and talk about how they were feeling, you know, how that made them feel, and I mean, that made a huge difference, you know, in people's mental health and just people who aren't in the Black community, helping them understand why these things are, you know, do impact us, and why we are having an off week at work, or, you know, why we did miss that deadline. It's, you know, because some of that thing, or, you know, what happened with George Floyd impacted people so significantly, and you know, just seeing how that helped versus how not having it during the Trayvon Martin, or not the Trayvon Martin, but the George Zimmerman trial. Just seeing those differences illustrates the point of having that community.
Yeah, that safe space. Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm gonna ask you one thing. What advice would you share for? I'm not gonna say prospective students, but you know, let's assume everyone out here is going to get admitted, but as they're preparing to start their journey in their business degree, and assuming that they may be similar to all of us, not in the majority, you know, attending an institution where they are not in the majority. What are some tips, or what are some advice that you would have in terms of best preparation, both mental, physical, you know, tactics, hacks, whatnot, to be prepared, both academically, but also just kind of socially and mentally too?
Okay, I could go first. I would say very good resource that I would maybe suggest would be you actually like reaching out to people and like having conversations, because like when I was applying to Fuqua and planning to come to the US, I think one biggest resource that I had at my disposal was the people that I was able to reach out to, and like this went across even like the current MMS students at the time, and even up to like the MBA students then. And this like cut across even like in preparation for like the applications, and then like where to live and some of those things. Because I was telling somebody like during my meeting at the off-campus student advisory board that like trying to choose a home here in Durham might be quite different from like where you're used to. So because of the like the environment here. Like a 10 minutes drive for you in Durham might be different from a 10 minutes drive where you're coming. So even down to like those things like housing, these things help prepare you mentally for like your journey through school, and then you probably won't know these things if you do not like reach out to people to actually ask questions. So I would say a major resource would be reaching out to people, like the things you need to know to prepare for business school, as well as you're living here in like the Durham community. It would definitely be a great resource. And I also believe that like another thing that they help in helping our students are like the admissions committee, and like currently I sit as part of like the admissions ambassador committee, and I was very interested in this role because I felt like it's just easier when you're able to like know these things from people that had similar experiences as you. And so like again, reiterating it is that like reaching out to people and like asking questions would actually help you clear out or navigate like whatever challenge you think you might face.
Yeah, no reason to recreate the wheel. You guys just went through it, so that's right. Reach out to your resources.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think one of the biggest things that helped me in my journey was when I was a part of MLT. So making sure that you look into the resources that are available to help you prep for coming into business school. There's a lot of different boards and things where people share their stories. And speaking on stories, really harping on understanding exactly what your story is and being very confident in that. A lot of the times people, especially Black people, will feel a little self-conscious about what exactly they want to share of their story. And there is a fine line between what's appropriate and what's not. But I do want to encourage people to really be their authentic self in the application process, and don't shy away from the things that made you who you are. Because if you're even looking at coming to business school, you're already in the right place. So that's my advice.
And I would even say, being authentic, being vulnerable, sharing that story, not just in the application process, but also when you get to school, right?
Yes.
When you're, developing a relationship with your classmates. I mean, they've got to know the real DeMontrez, right? They have to connect and figure out where are the similarities, where are the differences, how can we connect? Don't bring your representative to school, right? Be comfortable enough to continue to share those stories, right? So to build those bonds.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for me, I'll take more of a mindset approach. It'd be number one, just maintaining an open mind. What you're coming, where you're coming from, whatever shape that or shape those thoughts. Of course, that's going to be who you are. That's going to be a part of you. But look to approach this journey, this Duke MBA journey, with an open mind and just a fresh lens. And then number two. This is a quote we got from one of our, we had a guest speaker come in, Rashida Hodge, for our leadership class, and she said one of my favorite quotes is that, you decide where you belong, not anybody else. And we can have a tendency to come in and, see that we're one of a few and I might not belong here, this might not be for me, but, nobody else tells you where you belong. So just approach it with that mindset, and you'll have a great journey.
That's wonderful. Great advice, you guys. Okay, so I'm going to do some spot questions for each of you. The first one's to you, DeMontrez. Just, because we are in a business school, we've talked a lot about the community, but we haven't talked a lot about the experience that you guys are having. So what's a typical day like for you as a second-year MBA?
Yes, so typical day as a second year, I will say here at Fuqua, I don't know about other schools, but the minute you wake up, the first thing I do is check my calendar, because we have so much going on, so many meetings. If you're in leadership like I have been during my career, sometimes you have a meeting that was scheduled while you were asleep. So you just have to always make sure you have some type of handle on your day as you go forth. But outside of that, normally you strategically plan when you're going to come up to the school, because 9 times out of 10, once you get here, it becomes very hard to lead. So whether that means that some type of activity is going on for someone else's club or your own club, or you're even just meeting up with some of your classmates to complete an assignment. Business school is full of group assignments. So every day is pretty busy and filled. And I guess advice from that standpoint is just to be ready to rip and run. We have this rule in my group where you never go anywhere without your laptop. You could be going to a happy hour and your laptop needs to be in your car, like just in case, just in case you forgot something. Because sometimes that's when you find out that an assignment is due that you forgot about. It's like you're at the bar, it's 8 o'clock, and someone's like, yeah, I went ahead and turned in that assignment that's due at 10:30. And you're like, oh wow. And you have to get it done. So just always being ready. And that's what a typical day has felt like. And I appreciate that about the business school experience that we have here at Fuqua, because when you go into some of these jobs, when you're in IB or you go into consulting, that's what it feels like. You're always on, you're always ready. You have to be ready. You have to be ready to speak. Whenever something happens, you have to be knowledgeable when it's time to speak. So definitely Fuqua gets you ready for that. Okay. If you put your all into Fuqua.
Mm-hmm. Anything in particular you want to accomplish before you graduate?
Yes. So I will say halfway through my Fuqua experience, I thought of something that I felt would be really good for the Black community that would allow us to really focus more on each other. And we have been doing a lot of work to get that together, and we're really excited for some great news at the end of the month to share the hard work that we've been doing. So I won't really say that here now, but please follow us on our Fuqua plate, on our Instagram page, Blimbow, and we'll do a big announcement there.
Man, he left me on a cliffhanger. I'm waiting. I'm like, what's coming?
Alrighty, Mosun, your turn. What's a typical day like for you as a Master of Management Studies, Foundations of Business student?
For me, I'd say most of my time in school is like tilted towards like the evenings, afternoons, like till later in the evenings, and that's because like we have different sections here, and so like these sections run at different times, and I coming here, my sections were like, for my classes were like starting in the afternoons up until like the evenings down to about 6:30, and so I definitely had to learn to maximize my mornings as well. Sometimes I decide to come into school as early as I can just to get things done in the morning, and sometimes I decide to like maybe stay at home and like spend those days doing something relating to schoolwork and everything. And like you said earlier, there are so many assignments, teamwork, and another thing that you need to learn to do is actually work around your fellow classmates' time, because it's possible that they're taking an elective that you're not taking, and so like you guys have different schedules and everything. But I would say for the classes, definitely run through like 4 hours classes on average daily, and you navigate that, and then you have to go back home as well to like get on with assignments if you're not done with those, or like prepare again for the next day. And I think especially during this time when like everybody's involved in recruitment as well, like so many things are going on at the same time, and also here at Fuqua, like there are so many activities that you can plug into that could like fill up your calendar. So you just really need to know like what you are going for, your priorities, and then like set it right and then navigate your day.
Okay. And what are you looking at doing after you graduate?
After graduation, because I had like my prior experience in banking, which I found interesting.
Okay.
I'm still looking to stay in banking, but like I'm particularly interested in things around project or infrastructure financing, and I think the interest is more from the fact that like somehow I just love to see how possible it is for like projects, like bringing projects to life, whether real projects or like even in terms of businesses, which might have even come up from the fact that I studied real estate in my undergrad as well. So like just that transition. So I still want to stay within that space, but like in terms of like infrastructure financing or project financing.
Great, good. And then Shaq, what's a typical day for you as a weekend executive MBA student?
Yeah, so our days.
And can you describe a residency?
Yep. I was gonna say our days look completely different from what the daytimes do. So how our program's a hybrid program, and so that means that we've got one weekend on campus, and then we have one weekend that we join either remotely or we can still come in if you're local. So the weekend on campus, we call it a residency, and come in, everybody travels in Thursday night. Some people come in Friday morning if they got a long travel, but come in Thursday night, and then Friday from 8 to 5, we're in classes. So 3 classes throughout the day. And then Sunday, well, then after that, we break for dinner. And then in the evenings, we typically are doing teamwork, catching up on homework, or going out and having some social bonding. And then Sunday, no, that was Friday. And then Saturday, similar structure. Get up 8 a.m., 3 classes, end at 5, and then usually another time for you to meet with your team and get some work done, or go out and have dinner with other people in the cohort. And then Sunday is more of a condensed day, so we start at 8 and wrap up at like 2 o'clock, and then people travel home. So that's a typical on-campus residency, and we have those once a month. And then the hybrid weekend is one day, Saturday from 10 to 5, and again, 3 classes in the day. And for people who are calling in, they take all the classes on Zoom. And me, I live here in Raleigh, so I come to campus and take all those classes. So that's a typical class day for the WIMBA program.
Okay, you've enjoyed it?
Yeah, I do. Like I love the structure, and we're team based, just like the other programs. And we've got team assignments due, we've got individual assignments due, and so juggling that. I love the structure of the program because it allows me to still focus on my day job and, also focus on school adequately and, and get a lot out of it. So I enjoy the hybrid structure.
Great. Well, that's a nice overview of, the majority of the different programs here. I'm going to ask you guys each one last question, then we'll wrap it up. And that is, what advice would you share with your classmates who are not of the African or African American experience, cultural history, in terms of how they could continue to be or be strong allies for those who are like us?
Yeah, I would say for me, number one is have an open mind. Again, I said that before for another answer, but I think this applies here as well. My number one advice would be have an open mind when engaging with someone from the Black community, because like DeMontrez said, we're not monolithic. There's so many different experiences and diverse, unique backgrounds, but even within the African diaspora. So have an open mind, number one. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and ask questions tactfully. Like there's a way to don't come up to me and say, well, what you do to your hair? Because I used to have locks, and I would get that a lot. It's like, but there's a way to ask about something that you're interested about tactfully. So number one, have an open mind, and then number two, don't be afraid to ask questions and ask them from a place of respect as opposed to a condescending place.
Mm-hmm. Great. 2 different ones, or 1 different, whatever. 1 or 2, whatever.
Yes.
Different.
I think one of the biggest things that I would give is just to be very thoughtful in your approach to certain things that involve a community that you're not a part of. In the same way that I think a lot of us are very careful with how we ask questions and things of that nature. I know there sometimes can be some confusion, especially if you're not from the States, on why certain things are a certain way. Great example of that would be around early programs. There's always a lot of conversation year over year over why certain diversity groups get access to certain things earlier. So just being able to ask questions around that without leading with offense or feeling like something was unfair, especially without knowing like the lay of the land and why those things are that way.
Without judgment, yeah. That's a good one.
For me, I would say like being intentional, and that just like speaks to the fact that like when you're asking maybe questions, like genuinely ask these questions like you want to know them. Like for example, I've had people ask me that, oh, like where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Nigeria. And then they go further to ask, oh, where in Nigeria are you from? And I'm like, from Lagos. And they might be like, oh, Lagos, I know Lagos. So it just kind of speaks to the fact that like they actually want to know, and from there it even makes conversations easier. So I think speaking to the fact that like you being intentional about knowing these people that are different from you, also understanding the fact that like you guys might have different tastes, do not necessarily mean that like maybe they're less of you or you're more than they are, but like you just wanting to embrace the fact that this person has a different taste from me, but I actually want to know a different experience. So I think for me it would just be being genuine about reaching out, like be genuine about it and be intentional about you just wanting to like know these people and like accept them into like your community.
I'm curious. That's great. Great advice, you guys. Thank you. Well, wow, we have like 4 more minutes, so time does fly when you're enjoying it. So this is a good conversation, and it's meant to be really, an opportunity to hear different perspectives, different experiences, and so hopefully you have learned that from our guests today. I want to thank each of you for joining us and for being so vulnerable and for being so open and honest and sharing kind of your thoughts and perspectives. And thank you all out there. Tune in for our next Blue Table Talk, Equity and Empowerment for Women at Fuqua, which is on March 22nd. I want to thank you again. This has been really a wonderful, discussion and in a nice way to really, be able to celebrate Black History Month. I think it's more than just a month, personally, but like I'm really glad that we were able to take this time today to really share with our audience the experiences, the diverse experiences that the 4 of us actually even have right at the table. So thank you all, and thank you all of you out there.